All right. What is UX and UI design? Let's start with UI design. User interface design is the point of contact between humans and computers. It focuses on the visual elements of a website or application and ensuring a navigation path is visually attractive and effortless to use. There's always confusion between UI design and UX design. Where's the line that separates the two? The fact that UI design concerns itself only with the interface, including things like the layout, buttons, and visual hierarchy, it does not include things like interactions, animations, usability testing, or user stories, all of which are strictly UX design territory. Ultimately, both UI and UX design have to work together in order for any product to truly succeed. So here's an example of UI: colors and fonts, components, visual hierarchy, buttons, links. All of those things are choices you're making for the interface design of any product or service that you're using digitally, whether it's an app or a website. UX design focuses on the interaction between humans, which are users, and a product via an interface. The UX design is a critical parts of the user experience. UX design is really broad. It can be confusing to contemplate all the things that it touches. UX research, knowing what users need and don't, doesn't just happen. Design teams invest money, time, and effort into qualitative and quantitative studies to better understand users. Teams use certain methods of research, like competitor analysis, to create documents that help designers in their work. These documents are materials like user personas, user stories, or user journeys. UX research is generally about understanding users and finding the right path to the product. So when we look at UX design, it's the interaction between the humans, the users, what they seek to create, meaningful experiences, create products that fit the lives and needs of users, and includes research, definition of the functioning structure, and visual aspects. Everything that people use needs UX. We use so many things every single day that it can be easy to overlook the things that make it easy for us to do it all. Something as simple as crossing the street uses UX. Of course, your appliances in your home. Think about those remote controls. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, right? What are they doing with the UX? How well are they working? Let's go into interaction design. This is largely about defining the behavior of the product when people interact with it. Examples include things like what happens when you click a button, the change in color of Instagram's heart or icon, or how some elements move to indicate their clickability. Interaction design can be a broad topic, but there's no doubt that it's crucial in helping users to complete tasks. Information architecture, IA. This is about creating a product that people can understand and use, as opposed to confusing users who can't ever complete a task or find what they're looking for. Information architecture is generally about dividing content and organizing everything in a logical way so that users don't need to stress about finding a store item or break a sweat over locating a contact form. Navigation design, commonly referred to as the backbone of the design or the hallways through which users move around your product. Navigation design is about getting users from point A to B without any frustration. With a minimum effort on behalf of the users, failure to provide sound navigation can result in stressed users who abandon your product. How many times have you found yourself shopping online and found the interface so frustrating or the way it was functioning so clunky that you didn't even want to continue with your purchase, or you just were like, this is just too hard to find what I'm looking for, I'm moving on to something else. Failure to provide sound so once a true UX design catastrophe is when when you walk away from it because it's too frustrating. It's worth noting that navigation and AI and IA go hand in hand when it comes to creating a quality experience for users. Then there's usability testing. Usability is all about navigating how users experience the product and react to the design. This is about observing real people and verifying their behavior was what the design team had intended. Usability testing is a world in itself with excessive methods of testing that are deserving of undivided attention. Check out our guide. So let's see. Oh, I see a question. Yes, Natalie.
I'm sorry, I don't know if it's just my screen, but have you moved several slides? Because I'm
Natalie, did
still
you have a
on the.
question?
I'm sorry, can you hear me? That
Can you hear me? Or I don't know, maybe you're talking
um
and I can't hear you.
sorry, that can you hear me now?
Okay, I can't hear you. Can everyone,
Oh,
is it just me or can everyone hear?
Hello?
I can hear you. I can hear Natalie.
You can hear her. Okay, hold on. Let me see. It might be my earbuds. Hold on, give me 1 second. I'm going to switch. Give me 1 second. Can you select? Why can I not hear? Okay, we're back. So prototyping and so here's the example of prototyping and wireframing. So we just talked about the information architecture, the structure, the navigation, how we start figuring out how that's going to work from the flowcharts is by going into wireframing and prototyping. Prototypes and wireframes are the embodiment of all the hard work that design teams invest in projects. They capture the looks, feel, and functionality of the final project and are used to test the design on real users. Wireframes tend to be all about functionality, focusing on things like navigation and layout. And prototypes are more high fidelity, including all the details of the final product from interactions to the visual appeal. So you'll see the one behind here is just gray boxes. That's a wireframe. There's no photos, there's no real type. It's just showing where things are going. It's really a blueprint of where we're going to put things. Even the navigation isn't fully figured out what those words are going to be. And then you can see how it transforms when it gets to the prototype. Everything we're going to be doing in this semester is going to be going as far as prototyping. We're not programming anything. We'll be going up to prototyping. In other words, we'll be creating files that would be, the next step would be to hand it over to a developer to develop. There we go. Okay. So user experience is a lot of research. Understanding the people and the problem is your research. This is the most basic aspect of UX design that newbies absolutely need to understand. Before any actual design can be done, the design team has to put their own assumptions and opinions aside in order to do some critical research. First, who are we designing for? Who are our users? What do they do? How do they live? This stage comes hand in hand with understanding the problem our product will solve. These users will be made into one or more user personas, which will stay with the team for the entire project. Having a good user persona is important because it will help the design the team stay objective and encourage empathy. This is the time to understand the user, their pain points, and their behavior. And you have to make sure that you get out of the way of that because it's not about you, it's about your user, who might not be you, might be very different from you. Just as important, the team also needs to solve real life problems with their design. You want to ask questions like, how often does this problem happen? How frustrated are users with it? What will they be willing to pay in order to be free from it? Remember that truly impressive solutions solve impressive problems. If the chosen problem isn't a big deal, chances are the solution won't be either. As you may have guessed by now, these are all highlighted in the initial research stage of any project. Understanding people's behavior isn't easy, and it doesn't happen overnight. The research is a long process that involves things like interviews, analysis, and lots of digging. We're going to be talking a lot about user-centered design. When we're working in UX, we're thinking about the user first. In reality, all design is always thinking about the user. Those of you who have gone through design 1, 2, and even 3, we've been talking about who is the user, who is this for, who's your audience. But when we get into product development, which is what user experience is, you're developing a product. It definitely is goes deeper because it's how they're interacting with this. User-centered design is often called the pillar of UX design. User-centered design is all about creating tailored experiences to your users. The entire concept encourages designers to change their mindset when it comes to who they're designing for. The argument goes that all products are human-centered, as in created for humans, but your product won't be used by all humans. For your users are a specific group of people with specific mental models and preferences and needs. These details are the designer's bread and butter, marking the very things that need to be reflected in the product design. User-centered design isn't just about understanding a problem that we have and we have to solve. It's about understanding the context that surrounds that problem. In theory, this will be resulting in a product that truly fits like a glove for that user because it adapts itself to their mental models. In practice, this means that the initial user research will be extensive and painstaking because it acts as a base on which everything else is built on. So let's talk about strategy and design materials. From the research that we do, the deep dive, the design team will start understanding the users and troubles. As the information gives context to the problem and things that surround it, leading the designer to understand the very people they're designing for. This is also called requirements gathering. Once the information has been gathered, we start to see certain changes in mentality. Designers now go from digging up details and information to try to make sense of all the information, trying to apply it all to the design. The decisions need to be made, such as how to approach the problem or how to reflect the user's needs in the product. These important decisions all play a part in the strategy of the product. We start to see details in the future solution, like both primary and secondary features. Technical capabilities start to be discussed. The strategy needs to be carefully planned out because it needs to check several boxes: business needs, user needs, as well as usability. You're going to hear a lot about usability and access this semester. Usability is how we make sure that the reality of the product matches the expectations. After all, every designer out there ultimately wants to deliver a good experience to the user. Each decision they've made, every little detail was carefully planned so that the user can enjoy it all. But things often get out of hand. This happens most frequently when designers lose sight of the user and start designing for themselves. This is a one-way road to bad usability. How many of you have ever experienced bad usability when you've gone to a website or an app? How many of us, I was just working through, what is it called? COD Access, which I think you all use that as well, right? The COD Access, you have your own version of it. And the portal, that whole portal. When I think of bad usability, I think of the portal. The portal is horrible. And it is so, I sat through an in-service. Last week, we all had in-services, all the teachers. And I sat through a 2.5 hour presentation of how to find things in that portal, because that's how convoluted and nonsensical it is, that a user can't use it. You have to actually go and be taught how to use it, because the things you need cannot be found. If that doesn't say bad usability, I don't know what does. So we want to make sure that we do not go ahead down that road of bad usability, that we want to make sure our design stays true and we think about the user and how the user is going to function and use whatever it is we're designing. We need to test and test and test again to make sure things are working. Usability testing is the only way designers have of validating the work they've done so far. And it can be only realistically done with the prototype. The more details the prototype has, the more realistic the experience of users will be, which leads to more accurate results. Sure, you can test a bunch of boxes and white backgrounds, but you have to take the results with a grain of salt. Once the details come into play, you can start to trust people's reactions and behaviors during tests. Usability and accessibility, we want to make sure that the reality of the product matches our expectations. Every designer out there ultimately wants to deliver a good experience for users. Each decision they've made, every little detail was carefully planned so that users can enjoy it all. So we want to make sure that we're thinking about how the user needs to work and testing it with our prototypes. So there's going to be a lot of theories you're going to be learning about this semester, and this is one of them, Nielsen's heuristics of design. These are all but a classic. The Norman Nielsen's group created 10 rules that apply to all products that UX designers get their hands on. These are known to be quite tough to respect, especially all at once in the same product. With that said, these rules act as a standard when it comes to great usability, effectively setting the bar for all designs. So we're not going to go into all of them right now, but there'll be another talk about them. But these are some of the things that we want to be thinking about, and we will be thinking about as we move into designing interactive. This is the visibility of system statuses. This is a way of saying that users need to know what happens at all times. When we're dealing with interactive work, we need to give clues to our viewers about what's happening. Since we're talking about interactivity, it can't just be static places. We have to give them information. Since humans can't truly talk to machines, it's up to the designers to indicate that commands have been registered, that something's loading, or that some data is being retrieved. Absence of system status usually results in confused users pressing the same button over and over again. How many of us have been in that boat where you don't know what's happening? You're pushing a button, nothing's happening. They're not giving you any prompts or tools or clues, right? That's something we have to think about when we're talking about UX. It's not just about designing a button or designing an interface. The usability aspect is, how do we communicate to that user that this is what's going to happen next? Wait, we're working on it, or go to the next thing, or a dotted line, like a little arrow saying, look at a little bar that's kind of pulsating, letting you know that it's loading. All those things are there for a reason. They're to help you understand what's happening. Users want control and freedom. People need to be in control of what happens in the products, as well as to have freedom from their own mistakes. People will often regret buttons clicked or text sent, and it's up to designers to help them to be free from the consequences of these mistakes. Things like undo buttons come into play here. Consistency and standards are also going to be very important. Trying to push boundaries and innovate is great, but there's a right way to do it. And when it comes to UX design, it's important to remember that users spend lots of their time using all kinds of digital products. These products have to set their expectations, and try to go against these expectations can be disastrous. So what that means, we all expect certain things to work a certain way. We're not reinventing the wheel. So users expect a hamburger icon to be the menu, and instead of fighting this assumption, you need to use it in your favor. We have an understanding of symbols that already exist and how to use them. So when we're designing, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to use the symbols and the assumptions that people already have and use it in our favor to make it more usable. Error prevention, just like you want to help users recover from their mistakes, you also want them to minimize the margin of error. This is all about testing the design and finding areas that are most error prone and adjusting accordingly. Rather than it being a slip due to inattention or conscious mistake, you want to have users simply enjoy the app and not make an active effort not to make a mistake. So a few more are recognition rather than recall, flexibility and efficiency, aesthetic and minimalist design, helping users recognize, diagnosis, and recover from errors. All of these things. I'm not going to go too deep into these right now because we're going to go through this again. Nielsen's heuristics of design in another lecture, but they're just kind of touching the iceberg on all the little things we're going to be thinking about in UX design. Help and documentation. You want to make things easy so users don't need any help. So the idea is, as you can see, and you've used all of these things in forms when the email address must be included. If you've forgotten something in a form and they're like, yep, you can't keep going on, you got to add in this box, you got to put this in, you can only use numbers here or whatever it is. We want to make sure that we're always giving people as many clues as possible. So those are all some of the things we think about that are much more about user experience, which is how do we interact with the digital products we're designing. Any questions, or as we kind of, what do we think when we I wanted to kind of give you a pretty wide overview, understanding what the user's about and the difference of that and just the interface design. I'm going to stop the recording here and then we'll continue talking.